My name is Melinda Beyer. I go by Mindy. And today I'd like to talk to you about my friend Kate. I'm a mom and a Marine Corps officer, and I'm writing today on behalf of my best friend, another Marine, Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas. Her name may ring a bell for you, specifically when discussing the burn pit legislation she has been so adamantly and selflessly helping push through Congress. I believe that Kate's story is one that you will appreciate. Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas was born into service. She began as a Marine brat, with a Marine colonel as a father, living on bases all over the world. She is the oldest of 4 kids and has 2 sisters and an energetic, supportive mom, also named Kate, as well as a Marine brother who also served in the Marine Corps back in the aughts. They all grew up together, doing the Marine Corps Daily 7 as PT, that's physical training, on weekends, just as soon as Kate could toddle. Kate was a star student, and she attended UVA for her undergraduate degree starting in 1998. On July 6, 2001, Kate and I met for the first time at Marine Corps Officer Candidate School in Quantico, Virginia, in a culture unknown to military women now. It was in an era when our drill sergeant could still roam the barracks, R. Lee Ermey style, expounding wisdom such as, "Well, ladies, when you're Marines, you get to choose between 3 options, bitch, dyke, or hoe." Pretty sure they're not allowed to say that anymore for very obvious and valid reasons. Hell, it was still even peacetime, although it would be the final time we would know peace in our budding careers. We all graduated OCS in late August 2001, the last class of female officers to join the Marine Corps before we entered a war for the next 20 years. That was the beginning, and Kate and I have been friends and then best friends every day ever since. It wasn't just Kate and I either. There were several women in our OCS class who came together tighter than a snare drum, and we were an inseparable lot. Our friendship was built upon shared physical duress and then grew throughout war, deployments, death of our brothers and sisters in arms, marriage, divorce, children, and illness. Little anecdote. Back in 2004, 3 years after we had all met, when we were all young and single, determined wannabe badasses making our way around Southern California on the dating scene, one evening we met a man from France. He looked our group up and down, and with a heavy accent, asked us what female Marines were called. Not missing a beat, we answered, "We're called Marines." This was a question and a prejudice we faced fairly regularly, and we expected this kind of banter. What we weren't expecting was his admiration and awe. He raised his eyebrows and replied in a very French way, in a very French accent, a hint of condescension mixed with the compliment. "Oh no," he gasped with faux surprise. "There must be a special name for you. You women are like, sexual warriors? I think you should be called, clitorians. Yes, you are clitorians." And, what can I say? It was clever. The name stuck. We referred to ourselves from that point on, rather jokingly, as clitorians, female Marine warriors. Now, 15 years on, I know that we were much more than that. We were a physicist from MIT, and a mathematician from Northwestern, and a poet from North Carolina. We were a Native American cowgirl from Wyoming, and a hippie from Austin, Texas. With the benefit of hindsight, I see that we were a new breed of intellectual fighters, women warriors that were strong and smart and female. We knew that we were doing something different, but due to the war and the zeitgeist of society, our generation of Marine women became trailblazers, setting the stage for a new wave of female revolution in the military in ways we couldn't possibly foresee. Of course, at the time, we were all just trying to make it through. We were in that pace of constant deployments and trauma of Iraq and Afghanistan, and we shrugged off the fact that it was served up with a hearty side of inappropriate comments, occasional ass slaps, or the concern that our service would affect our future health a decade later when we became mothers. We were Marines just like everyone else, and we were fighting a war to protect America. Kate had answered her call to service as a Marine police officer in our beloved Corps. She deployed to Iraq and led her security team with resilience and strength. For months, she lived, patrolled, even jogged around one of the burn pits in Fallujah. There were only so many places one could train while at war, and that thick black smoke filled her living space on the regular. Jet fuel has an impact on the health of our bone marrow. U.S. Air Force studies have found that repeated exposure to jet fuel causes bone marrow damage to be cumulative and permanent, even after only a few hours. Kate spent months sleeping, working, and running around one. Kate returned home after her deployment visibly unscathed. We all saw this as a blessing, as her brother Matt had suffered a catastrophic injury from an IED while he was also serving there simultaneously. Injuries and death had become common amongst our Marine brethren. After 6 years of service, including a stint training young women at Parris Island, Kate left the Corps. She wanted to continue to help veterans, and she pursued a doctorate in public health at the University of Alabama. During her studies, Kate began to advocate for veterans' mental health as they returned from the front lines. Kate used her knowledge to write 4 books on veterans' health and resilience, always living her mantra of leaders have a responsibility to inspire. She wrote, she researched, she fundraised, and she testified to Congress about veterans' health issues. She continued to push the needs of the military folks everywhere to the forefront of American awareness. The irony kicked in 2018. All of the knowledge and all the king's men couldn't keep Kate from America's sin, the toxicity of the burn pits that our nation, our military, and our government had allowed. When Kate was 38 years old, she went in for a regular checkup. She was married now, with a 3-year-old son, Matthew, and a husband, Shane. Still young and with a Marine sense of impenetrability, Kate told me later that she was feeling annoyed at the inconvenience, even mildly insolent, that day when the physician's assistant insisted on more tests. "Let's run some scans," the PA said. You've been around burn pits. You've deployed and lived on bases. You have risk factors. Better to be conservative and do screenings a little early. "Oh, I'm fine," Kate guffawed, but she trusted the medical professional's instincts overall, and she scheduled an early mammogram. The physicians told Kate it looked as if she'd been dipped in something. Every single one of her bones contained metastases that day. What had started as a silent breast cancer had progressed into each bone of her body without her knowledge, without pain, and without much hope for mitigation. No warnings, no symptoms. It was a silent assassin that had approached on our squad leader 6, and we, her fire team leaders, we never saw it coming. And so, Kate's life shifted. Our lives shifted. She fought even harder for veterans and their rights. She fought the VA for her own health care. And of course, she did this while fighting cancer. For almost 4 years, she has been living a routine: chemotherapy, doctor's appointments, injections, supplements, and radiation. Nausea always happens for the first several days of the week, and then there were a few good days before the cycle started all over again, every week for 4 years. She actually took a risk, according to her doctors, and she begged for a week off from chemotherapy to attend a wedding in 2019. It was my wedding, and that's one of the only times I can remember her taking a pause in treatment because she desperately wanted to enjoy herself and reconnect with all of her Marine sisters. She wore a blue wig and a black pantsuit and was as much of a life of the party as her energy allowed. Kate has always been an optimistic, smiling extrovert, and I have awesome pictures at my wedding to prove that while her health may have faded, her sense of humor did not. Unfortunately, the next week, she was back to that routine. Kate has been sick and exhausted and vomiting and nauseous for the majority of these past 4 years. Can you imagine having nausea nearly every day for 4 years? Crying in pain on the regular because you feel like your body is giving up, because your liver is failing, and your insides ache to an extent that you've never felt before, even during childbirth? Can you imagine going through this in front of your 4-year-old or your 6-year-old? I can't, because it seems insurmountable. I watched in awe as she fought with grace and selflessness. We brought groceries and babysat Matthew and did her laundry while she lost everything: her strength, her hair, her weight, her time, and finally her liver, and with it, the ability to accept any more treatments. And I know every moment that I spend with her that I'm in the presence of greatness. Kate has shown magnificent dedication and leadership, rarely seen except in the very best of humanity, and even then, only in times of existential crisis. Here she was, vomiting yet inspirational, and that's my Kate. While losing all sense of dignity, she also lost her sense of privacy and gracefully allowed documentary film crews and writers into her home and hospital rooms in order to witness the daily struggle, to convey the vileness of the burn pits, and to promote the initiative to help those veterans who had been exposed. She allowed the ugliness and injustice of her sickness to be filmed, all the retching, her weight gain and loss, the puncture wounds and procedures, the tears of her family. She has been so incredibly selfless in sharing her private moments, her pain, and her strength for the good of those who will come after her. After Kate's struggle was aired in a documentary in 2021, after 3 years, the VA finally allowed her illness to be declared service-related. Kate does what she does for the veterans. She also does this for her son, Matthew. I know. He is so young. He's now 7. And she is fighting for him to live in a better world, even with her last bits of life. He is watching, and the world is watching. Kate's fortitude is astounding to me. I am amazed and humbled every day by her fight. She has used everything she has ever learned, every shred of intellect and physical strength, and all of the leadership and respect she has earned, and she has used it to fight for those who need it most. Kate is the best of us. She has been the ultimate example of the new warrior generation that I mentioned, and she embodies the bold, brilliant, female, and fearless warrior. I am so proud to be at her side. I asked her recently if she would approve of Matthew, her son, joining the military one day. She paused, thoughtful, before answering. "I love the Marine Corps," she said, "but I would have to think about that some more. I wouldn't wish this struggle upon even our greatest enemy." Kate has continued to write and advocate. She was still testifying to Congress about burn pits 4 weeks ago, about their toxicity and the service connection she was fighting for, and that the VA should support it. She has traveled to conventions and spoken to raise awareness, despite the fact that every time she travels, she's often exhausted herself to the point of hospitalization and needing fluids. She continued her research, showing that an inordinate amount of veterans exposed to burn pits will develop cancer. Female veterans will develop cancer at a rate of 20 to 40%, which is 7 times higher than the general population. Veterans sacrifice in many ways: health, time, life expectancy, relationships, stable families. Kate served a long while ago, and she kept serving, and she's now viciously paying the price. As someone who has served and cares deeply for many who have served and continue to serve, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for your continued advocacy. I cannot tell you how much Kate and the rest of us appreciate your efforts and your fortitude. What you're doing matters so greatly to all of us, to all of the veterans, all of the Marines, all of Kate's family, supporting her at the end as she moves into and through this final stage of her fight. Kate went into hospice last week after exhausting every possible treatment she could with the cancer still advancing. Her Spartan resilience in her own battle of Thermopylae has been finally betrayed by her personal Ephialtes, her liver. Kate has 2 or 3 weeks left, according to her doctors. She is at peace and is spending her last days with friends and family, reminiscing about good memories and recording messages for her son. She won't be able to see him grow, but she has left a legacy that he can respect and legislation that we are fighting to push through every chance we get. This is my best friend, Kate. To everyone, I want you all to know Kate's name. I want you to remember her story, and hopefully you will tell it at some point and it will make a difference. It is up to us to rectify these wrongs and to support our warriors in their time of need. And to Kate, it is such an honor to pick up the flag for someone who knew from the get-go that she would die holding the line. You are a Marine and a warrior, and your brothers and sisters in arms are honored to continue your mission and carry your fight forward as it is now your time to rest. Semper Fi.